For the first time here, we're going to be talking about a DC-related movie after spending the last year and a half, Chris and I, breaking down every installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're going to be back here talking about the Suicide Squad, obviously the 2021 film that was just released this past week. And there's a lot to talk about. A lot of the good, obviously. This was a great movie. I have a lot to say about it as well. We got a stacked cast, per usual. Chris, you're back. Is it weird to be discussing something other than something Marvel-related for once, which is kind of crazy?
No, I'm happy to be going into the DC universe for once. We don't get nearly as much DC content as we do Marvel content, so it's a nice change.
Yeah, and I know we've actually discussed, we've shared our various thoughts over the last year and a half whenever something DC has come out. I don't know if we talked about Wonder Woman 1984 when that was released, but obviously you, Phil, and I have discussed the Snyder Cut on various occasions in our reviews of whatever was going on at that time. I think it was Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But we have a lot more positive thoughts, I would think, here today talking about the Suicide Squad. That little, change in the title from the last one from 5 years ago. Chris, you're on the Twitter machine, the doc. You're on the Twitter machine at B_doctor, BR_doctor. That is. Phil, you're on the Twitter machine at PhilDL616. Phil, what's going on, man? Welcome back, and welcome to the Suicide Squad panel here today.
Just gonna throw it out there. This is the only Suicide Squad movie. I don't know if any other movie doesn't exist.
It's like Rocky V that people talk about.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
And Chris, as you said earlier, our quest to get every member of the wrestling media on any superhero-related podcast that we've done over the last year continues here today with another fresh face, a fresh voice, I should say. Bill Pritchard from WrestleZone.com. Bill, you're on the Twitter machine at B Pritchard. That's BPRITCHARD152. Bill, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to discuss the only Suicide Squad movie out there.
Kind of going off that real quickly, I kind of asked this to everyone that we have on the show for the first time, but talk to me a little bit about your superhero roots and what you grew up watching, and whether it be the comics, the movies, what you're more familiar with, what you enjoy, stuff like that.
Pretty much starting out, it was everything Batman, anything that kind of branched off of Batman, whether it was like I watched Teen Titans, like Teen Titans Go, or I would read some of the offshoot comic books, like some of the Detective Comics stuff. Really, really big fan of Batman the Animated Series, so I've pretty much had Harley Quinn as a character that I grew up with, so pretty much started with Batman. Like, I'm a huge Riddler fan. And then I just started branching out. Like, really, it started with Saturday morning cartoons, and if I saw something on there, I would go and read comics, like the 90s X-Men show and then the Fox Kids Spider-Man. Like, those two shows and Batman kind of started my comic book fandom, and now I just pretty much read anything that is appealing.
And given your love for comics and everything else that you just mentioned, I mean, let's say theoretically there was a Suicide Squad movie that happened 5 years ago. Let's say there was a movie that was released around the same time 5 years ago that was completely different in terms of feedback, and it was just terrible. What was your level of anticipation, or what would have been your level of anticipation for a movie like that compared to this one, with everything that you know about these characters? You mentioned your kind of connection to the Harley Quinn character, and after a movie like that and how terribly it was received, did you have any hope? I mean, obviously James Gunn directed this one, and he had a lot of success with the Guardian stuff, and will continue to do so with the third one coming out in a couple of years. But talk to me about your level of anticipation for a movie like this.
I would say highly anticipated, just because of some of the reasons you just said. James Gunn, I'm a fan of his work. I think the DCEU Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie, like, that's one of the highlights of the film universe so far. I mean, I had paid more attention to it because John Cena's involved, so I'm a fan of a lot of his movies that he has done in the past. Like Trainwreck was a good one. Was it called Just the Wall? The one where
The Wall was good. Actually, that was a decent
that was pretty
movie.
good, even though it wasn't like a major release. Like, so I kind of like paying attention more to roles that kind of take him out of his element. Like, he's not playing just like a good guy. Like they're not like, oh, it's WWE's John Cena, let's make him a superhero. Like,
Yeah.
so I would say I had a strong investment in this one.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned the wall. I feel like the Cena character for this movie, and we'll kind of delve deeper into Cena's role in this movie specifically, given our ties to wrestling, but I feel like if you took his role in The Wall, which came out about 4 years ago, and combined that with like a character like he portrayed in Blockers, for example, like more of the comedy route, that's kind of what we got here with this movie with him playing Peacemaker, and I thought he was fantastic. But he wasn't the only one. I thought there were a lot of people in this movie. Pretty much the entire cast of Suicide Squad that was on the squad itself was great. Some familiar faces from the first one or from the last installment 5 years ago, some new ones, some notable names in the opening scene there that all got killed off, which was just great. But Phil, so for a movie like this, you talked about, this was the only Suicide Squad movie for you that exists. Going into it, you know that it's going to be a lot better than the original, given who is at the helm and who's writing and directing this thing, and James Gunn.
Well, the other one that technically exists, quote unquote existed. You could tell watching it that they were riffing off a lot of the stuff that made James Gunn's Guardians movies great, and doing it less effectively. And so I'm like, yeah, if you're gonna do his work, then just get the guy to come in and do it. So I figured he was going to do a better job, and the trailers were really good, so I had high hopes for it.
Were they always going to make a Suicide Squad second movie? Were they always going to make a second Suicide Squad movie, even if James Gunn didn't get fired from Disney a few years ago and they put him as the director? Were they still going to make it?
Yes, I want to say so, because I think it was already greenlit before they hired him.
Was the first movie that financial of a success, though? I don't remember.
I think I just read something.
It made money.
It made money, but it just was critically panned.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess they were probably just going to do a second one, but I mean, again, even if people shit on it, if it made enough money, they were always going to make a second one, I would assume. I'd have to go back and look at that, but I mean, him getting fired from Disney was the absolute best thing that could have happened, and then obviously they brought him back, and he's working on Guardians 3 now, so this guy's like living life right now. But Chris, talk to me about the comparison between the first movie, second movie. Again, when you hear a Suicide Squad 2 is announced, you hear that James Gunn is directing it, some of the people involved. Idris Elba, I thought, did a great job in this movie too. You got to be obviously more excited for this one than you were even going into the first one, right? Even without knowing that first one was going to be as bad as it is, or as it was, rather.
Yeah, I was definitely more excited for this one, mostly because of the cast that was announced for it. Just sounded really interesting, but yeah, I definitely think that this one, just from the get-go, like the advertising campaign was more effective, and it kind of was just also at a point where it's like, it's got to be better than the first one, right? So
yeah,
that was naturally what I was thinking. But, I tend to like most of what James Gunn does. Some of his earlier, like, low-budget stuff is a little on the weird side for me. But, yeah, he did a good job with this. And I know the big comparison is going to be to the Guardians movie because it's, two comic book movies about teams and stuff. But I felt like he did a good job making this feel completely different from Guardians.
Oh, 100%. It definitely had its own flavor, and I felt like, not that it was Guardians 2.0 by any means, but I felt like if Guardians, the first one, had a rated R rating, it would probably more resemble what this one looked like, with a lot of the jokes they made, and maybe not the gore per se, because we don't really see that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because no movie so far has been rated R. But yeah, no, definitely. I think it had that James Gunn flavor to it a little bit, and that was what really made it special and different enough from Guardians to where it really stood out. But talk to me about this movie itself. What really stood out about it to you, aside from that, in terms of, like you said, the cast, that had a great cast, or whether it be the story or the funny moments or whatever. What was it about this movie, Chris, for you, that really stood out and made it such a great movie?
I mean, really, it's... I wouldn't say that it's my favorite movie of all time or anything. Mm-hmm. Like, this movie is probably like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10 for me. Like, it's pretty good. I definitely have issues with certain things that they did, but for the most part, I think it was just the strength of the cast that carried it. Like, Joel Kinnaman this time around was much more enjoyable as Rick Flag. John Cena did a great job as Peacemaker. I really liked Idris Elba's character as well. And the girl they had playing Ratcatcher too, she was a highlight for me. Mm-hmm. So I think really just the casting choices that they made were probably the biggest strength that this movie had. It's also funny to me that this guy playing Polka Dot Man, like, it did not even occur to me that he was the Russian dude from Ant-Man.
Yes, he was. Yeah, his friend, the guy that he was working with, right? Yeah, you're right.
It didn't even stick out to me that it was him. And it's like
been a lot. He's been in a lot of like bit roles in superhero adjacent movies. Like, he was the cop that was in The Dark Knight that was at the shooting. Like, Gordon turned him around.
Oh shit! I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, Dalmatian.
Yeah, wasn't he on the Flash TV show as well?
Yes, he was. Yeah, so he's been in quite a few superhero properties. It's kind of funny. I actually, like, I was expecting him to be one of the characters that died early on, because I knew going into this how this was going to play out. One of the teams was going to be a joke team that mostly gets killed. I pretty much pegged that from the first trailer. Because there's certain characters that are just in the trailers more than the others. It's like, oh, Flula Borg is only in like 5 seconds of the trailer. Yeah, his character's gonna die quickly.
Or the guy from Guardians too. I forgot his name off the top of my head.
Michael
Rooker. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And I love how the movie starts with Savant. Like, they make it think like you're gonna be following his character throughout the movie.
And he really doesn't do anything other than save Weasel from drowning.
And actually, like, at first you don't even think he did successfully save him, because they just assume he's dead.
Yeah. That's a great point. And then obviously he survived at the end of the movie in the post-credit scene. But, I mean, I want to go back to one thing that you said, Chris, before we move on. You mentioned how you thought this movie was like a 7.5, 8 out of 10. I completely agree. It's not the greatest movie I've probably ever seen, obviously. But when you put it up against other installments in the DC, universe, in the cinematic universe, whatever, what is it, the DECU or DCEU?
I think DCEU is the accepted term, although Warner Brothers has never really embraced it.
Okay, it's more of a fan term, if anything. Okay, so in the DCEU, you look at all these other movies. Obviously, not every movie's been bad, but would you say this movie was made better by the fact that, obviously the first one was terrible, but when you look at other movies in the DCEU over the last 5 years, and how some have been better than others, this one being, I would say, either the best or one of the best they've done so far, does that make it better in your opinion?
I mean, it's unfair to judge movies based on other completely different movies, especially this one, because this is so far removed from things like Batman versus Superman. Like, it's a hard R rating. I mean, we got straight up female and male in this movie. It's all but like 1 second of footage, but it's in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, judging this in comparison to the rest of them is strange, but at this point I feel like DC is kind of just going their own way, and like, we're not going to try and do the big connected universe like Marvel. We'll connect some of our movies, and other ones will just sort of be standalone things, and this feels like it'll probably be in that standalone category if we see, other than Cena having the Peacemaker TV show, we'll see if any of these other characters besides Harley ever show up again.
With the movie like this, I had seen, and Phil, I'll throw this question to you. I had seen people say that maybe with the Suicide Squad going forward, and again, with this movie, I don't know how much money it made. I heard it didn't do entirely well. Maybe I could be wrong, and that was just one headline I saw yesterday. I got to go back and look. But with a movie like this, if they were to make another installment, like the crew of Suicide Squad, it's different faces each time. We got a couple of returning people in this movie, but it was a lot of new people for the most part, new actors and new characters and whatever. Would you want to see another movie with, again, kind of the same premise where it's a totally, not totally, but mostly different cast, maybe written by a different person, and that can kind of be the theme of the Suicide Squad, which is entirely different than any other, I would think, property with these superhero movies, where it's written and directed by different people each time, and that might become an issue at some point. But that was one idea I saw thrown out there that I thought could be interesting.
Yeah, I definitely would like to see a different cast if they try and do another one. I don't know how that's going to work because they're clearly probably not going to get James Gunn again unless he's already on contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if they could get him again if he was to do. I mean, maybe after Guardians 3 he could go back, or I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure, assuming that's even the final installment, which it might not be. I don't know. But we'll see. I don't know. I thought this one was good enough where if they were to do something similar in another 5 years, and maybe that one is completely terrible, but if they were to run it back with a different cast and maybe someone else writing it that's not James Gunn, but someone along those same lines, I thought could be interesting too. So, Bill, kind of talk to me about what you thought really stood about the movie and what you liked about it and why either you enjoyed it or didn't like it.
I liked how he wasn't afraid to kill certain characters. Like I am paraphrasing, but I think he had like carte blanche. Like I'm trying to think. I don't know if it was in a contract or not, but I think he said like he wouldn't do the movie without having like free reign on who he can kill off.
Oh wow, interesting.
So that kind of made it fun, and I think even the deaths that he did, like we already talked about, like Polka Dot Man, like he survived a lot longer than you thought, and then at the end you're kind of rooting for him, and like if you're listening this far, spoiler alert, he dies. So but even then, like the mid-credit scene, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more, but like that was also a really nicely done swerve. So when that first happened, and like I kind of glanced, and I had to rewind for some reason. I thought it was going to be Rick Flag in there. I don't know why, because I know the Peacemaker show's coming out, and they sold it as a prequel and like an origin story. So it'll be really interesting to see how they play that out. Like, is it going to be like an Arrow show where they cut back and forth between how he became that and his road to recovery and all that. So I like how they weren't afraid to take chances. And I also agree with having that like Guardians, like rated R Guardians flavor. But I don't think, like that wasn't a bad thing. That's why we like Guardians, and this steps it up a little bit where it wasn't like, I love Deadpool, but at the same time, some of the stuff really didn't land with me. So I kind of like how it wasn't all the way over the line. It was like just approaching the line. So, I liked it overall.
Yeah, I thought it was a great movie overall, and a lot of the things that you hit upon were what I enjoyed about it as well. You mentioned the Peacemaker show being a prequel. Was that confirmed to be a prequel? Because I figured after that post-credit scene, like, oh, okay, he died, but then obviously he's back now because they're going to take whatever the show that they're doing is taking place afterward. But you said it was a prequel, though.
The marketing positioned it as a prequel, so if you go back and read the synopsis, it doesn't specifically say that. People just thought it was, oh, okay, it's going to be, here's how he became the Peacemaker. But people largely assumed it was going to take place in the past. But as we see with the mid-credit scene, it's probably going to be a direct continuation of the two SHIELD agents that got put on his case or whatever to work with him, because they're also in the cast.
Yeah, no, that would make sense.
The synopsis kind of played, fast and loose with what it was going to be. It's just people assumed it was a prequel.
Yeah, no, you're probably right, though, when you had mentioned, too, that it could be a case where it's probably mostly, 80% a prequel, and then it can cut back to modern day or whatever. That's also possible. It is really amazing when you think about that they already filmed the entire show before this movie even came out, the Peacemaker show. I think that comes out in January, and we'll probably find out more about what it's supposed to be about in the coming months. But the fact that they really took a risk on a character like that, not knowing for sure whether this movie and his character specifically would be well received. I mean, I guess after they had filmed it, they thought, oh man, he did such a great job. Let's go further with this character and go in a totally different direction or whatever. But I feel like the wrestling fan in me thinks that coming out of a movie like this and the reaction that I've seen Cena's character, Peacemaker, get coming out of it in the last couple of days alone reminds me a lot of the reaction that Batista got following Drax in the first Guardians movie 6-7 years ago when no one was really sure whether the movie itself would be successful or he himself would be good in a role like that, and he fucking killed it. And now that Cena himself in a movie like this with the character that he portrayed was awesome too. Did you guys have similar vibes with Cena here in the role that he played? I mean, I know we kind of already talked about how he was a highlight, but I thought he was fantastic. And I don't know if this is going to be like the turning point for his acting career, because he's already been in some big stuff. Obviously, he was in F9 like 2 months ago. I know you and I, Chris, we actually talked about that like very briefly in one of these reviews. Maybe it was Black Widow like a week or two ago. But the role that he played in that movie compared to this one, I feel like was night and day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's sort of funny that I called this too. I was like, James Gunn is going to do for Cena what he did for Batista. He's going to take this pro wrestler and give him the funniest part in the movie. And sure enough, Cena ended up providing a decent amount of laughs as this character. Like, just the scene of him dancing in that club, like, that alone, you know that's going to be, like, a well-used gif, just him dancing like an idiot.
Yeah, I've already seen people using the gif where he says no when he's writing down in the notebook when they're doing the whole brief on what the mission is. That whole scene I thought was fantastic, too.
Yeah, they did a really good job with Cena in this. They didn't overdo it. That was one thing that I was concerned with. Like, are they going to rely too heavily on him selling one-liners and jokes and stuff? And like Bill said, they kind of like towed the line on that really well. And with a lot of things too, like I expected a lot more gore than we got.
Really? We got a lot of gore.
Yeah, I was about to say it. I don't know if we can get much more than we got.
I mean, a lot of it was subdued though. Like, you know, the scene when, let's just say the rebels go in and just shoot up all the generals in the room, like that could have been much bloodier than it was. All you see is a little blood on the window. All the starfish stuff was very cartoon gory. Like, it didn't strike me as realistic.
I get where you're coming from. Like, I would say aside from King Shark, who was ripping people apart,
yeah,
it was a little stylized, I would say.
Yeah, but like I think to its benefit, because I think had they gone much harder than they did and grosser, that it would have turned people off, because a lot of people are going to be grossed out by two very specific scenes in this movie. And if you can get past those, then the violence in this isn't a problem. But I think the scene when Ratcatcher sends 1 million fucking rats after the thing, like, some people are legitimately grossed out by rats. So that's going to creep some people out. But then when Harley goes into Starro's eye with the javelin, like, a lot of people have weird stuff about eyes, and seeing eyes be hurt in movies is like a cringe thing for people. So to see her literally puncture an eye with a javelin, I think that's going to give some people a little bit of PTSD.
I think there are much nastier scenes. I mean, watching the bird pick pieces of Savant's brain out. The most of the Starro scene when they discover what they're doing in Jotunheim, where you have stuff like the guy's face with like the ripped off star on it. It's like disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff was like, I consider that a different type of gore than violence gore. Like, that was almost aftermath stuff we were seeing. It's hard to explain. Like, watching a guy get ripped in half by King Shark is way gorier and disgusting to me than seeing a guy who's already been cut in half just sitting there.
Yeah, but I kind of going off what Phil said too. Even that Rebels in General scene too, where they just go off on killing everyone. I mean, they set like at least 2 people on fire. You see that poor guy taking a bath or something, and the fucking fan gets shot in. I mean, that was implied violence, but I'm like, oh my god, like now I'm just terrified. You know, with something like that happening. I don't know. It was just more like the implication of a lot of the stuff they did was what, like, oh shit, like, or that beach scene at the very beginning with some of the shit they did there.
Davidson's face getting shot off was pretty surprising.
That was pretty gross. Yeah, that's what I mean. They did it very well too. Like the CGI or whatever with whatever it was looked great. It was like, oh my god, that really set the tone for the movie. I thought the whole scene, we already talked about it, and you mentioned it, Chris, but I thought that was a great way to kick off the entire thing as well.
But I fully expected James Gunn to go a little harder on the hardcore gore than he did, and I'm happy that he didn't, because it feels like it's just the right amount for the R-rated DC universe.
Yeah, no, I think if they went harder with it than they did, that would probably be a turnoff for some people. I mean, I'm not into this super violent. I mean, this was pretty fucking violent with a lot of the stuff that Phil had mentioned. In addition to the stuff that you had mentioned too, Chris. I mean, that was pretty like, ooh, like the rat. I'm not a big rat fan, but everyone has some like it's just fucking weird. But yeah, that was it was what it was. But I thought they did the right amount of it, and yeah, I don't know. I thought the violence was great. I thought there was just a lot of points that were just entertaining, and I forgot what I was going to say next. But yeah, overall, I thought they really hit this thing right on the head. I thought it was just fantastic. I'm trying to think if there was another like major. Oh man, I don't remember what I was going to bring up. Maybe the cast, or I don't remember. But yeah, I thought Harley Quinn did another great job in this movie. And did you guys see Birds of Prey that came out last year or no?
Yeah, yes. We watched it a couple weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I didn't see the movie. So Harley Quinn's role in that movie compared to this one, how would you guys compare the two characters? Not even the first Suicide Squad movie, but these two movies.
It was a little more subdued, but at the same time, that movie allowed a little bit more. It was almost like slapstick. Like, I really liked Ewan McGregor in that, and he played Black Mask. And it was a very, like, heavy on the comedy, but it was, like more like a black comedy, like wacky take on everything. And it was like bright colors. And obviously that was, the director's choice, but I don't think her character was too much different.
Mm-hmm.
The major difference was they got rid of, like, her face tattoo.
Oh, okay.
But, like,
yeah.
I still feel like, the portrayal was pretty much on point. Maybe it just seemed more subdued just because of how much she was the star of Birds of Prey, and this is, like, the Suicide Squad really feels like an ensemble movie.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, Harley and John Cena and Idris Elba.
Yeah.
Like, it really felt like they made it a team instead of just having, like, supporting players of that team.
Yeah, I mean, even the Shark, too. I mean, I've seen a lot of love for King Shark, how do you pronounce it? Nanaue? I don't know how you pronounce it. Nanaue. I thought he was great. That was like the Groot version for the Suicide Squad, but like times 10 with the amount. First of all, I thought he died at least like 3 different times, and that would have broken my heart. Thankfully, that did not happen.
Right.
Yeah,
when he fell off the building, I thought he was done, and then he stands up and gets shot like 200 times.
Yeah, exactly. And then he had like the jellyfish on him too, or whatever the hell those were. I was like, oh my god, this poor thing. Like literally within the span of 5 minutes, I thought he died maybe 3 times, but no, he survived, which was great. Even the Polka Dot Man. I mean, you mentioned him before, Bill, but I thought he was great in the sense that I think James Gunn had said in an interview a while ago, he literally like Googled or searched or whatever the worst possible superhero in like the DC universe that he could use from a comic book, and that's how they incorporated Polka Dot Man into the movie. And even with like the backstory with like the mom thing and how you would see her face and the faces of all these other people, I thought that was a great touch too. And they really made you care about the character before he died as he wanted to, as he alluded to earlier on in the film.
That was so creepy when he was dancing in a club and all the girls turned into his mom.
Yeah.
I one of the biggest laughs I got in the movie was when they smashed the tank and all the jellyfish are like surrounding King Shark at first, and he's sitting there with that smile on his face, and then they just attack him. I'm laughing.
Yeah, that was great. I thought he did a really great job with that role too. And I mean, we haven't even mentioned her yet, but Viola Davis obviously returning as Amanda Waller in this movie, as not like she wasn't the main villain, of course, but she had like those tendencies where she didn't give a shit about Idris Elba's kid in the movie earlier on, with whether she went to jail or whatever. So I thought she was great. I thought she died when she got smacked in the head with a bat or whatever the hell it was by the people that she was working with, and obviously she didn't die. But a lot like the first movie, I thought she was perfectly casted for that role too.
Yeah, she was great in several scenes. Of course, when she like jumped up and was telling them to stand down, that was great. When they went back to save the town and she is just like cursing them out on the comm is great. Yeah, she's just a fantastic actress.
Yeah, she just did a great job. I hope if they do more of these movies, they bring her back too, because she was just fantastic. I did not know, honestly, until the movie was over, because I had seen when the movie started with the credits, like they put who was in it, John Cena, blah, 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 Idris Elba. I saw Sylvester Stallone's name. I didn't know who he was in the movie. I thought he was making a cameo or something. I completely forgot until the end that he was supposed to be the voice of Nanue, or the shark, or whatever, King Shark. I thought that was a pleasant surprise to find that out too.
I saw photos of him on the red carpet, and I was like, "Oh, it must like same thing. Like it must be a cameo."
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then it was like one of the first two things he said, and I was just like, "Wait, is that Sylvester Stallone?" And then I'm like, "Holy crap!" Like what they like again the Guardians comparison, like what they were able to make Groot do with Vin Diesel. Like I feel like they completely nailed having him as King Shark.
Do you guys think that was a James Gunn call? Because he was involved in Guardians too.
Oh, yeah.
There are like 4 cast members from Guardians in this movie.
Yeah, I was going to say Mantis, or I forgot what her actual name is, but the Mantis woman.
Palm, I can't think of her last name.
Yeah.
Simon Toff?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, Palm's there.
She was in the office, right? Where was she?
She was the dancer in the club with the red hair. Yeah.
She was
of
mostly
course.
like in the background, but she, like you could see her.
Yeah. And we had Michael Rooker, obviously.
Yeah, and then of course James Gunn's brother is in there. Sean Gunn's in there somewhere. He did the mocap for Weasel, I know.
He was Calendar Man.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He was Calendar Man.
Yeah, that was good. I recognized him immediately.
Make fun of Polka Dot Man. It's Calendar Man, the other lamest superhero.
Yeah, no, I thought it was cool to see him in there too, because I recognized him immediately when they showed him in jail as Calendar Man, but I had forgot that he had done the mocap for Weasel as well. Do you think if we see another one of these movies that Weasel rejoins the Suicide Squad, or what role could we see him, or was that just a gag and we'll never see him again?
I hope they do another gag.
Yeah, that feels like just a random James Gunn thing. Oh, we also forgot to talk about Taika Waititi's big mystery cameo as Ratcatcher 1.
I mean, I haven't seen him, honestly, in a lot of movies like his face. I just remember, obviously, him voicing Korg in Guardians and Thor 3 and Ragnarok. So as soon as I heard him talk, I'm like, holy, because I had recognized him, and I had just watched, like, literally, I saw this at a movie theater. So, like, right before this movie came on, right before the movie started, there was a trailer for Free Guy, or I think it's called, the movie with Ryan Reynolds that's coming out, I think this week, and he's in that movie too, and he was in the trailer, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I'm just a moron, but yeah, no, I thought that was a great cameo by him too.
Yeah, as somebody that like sees a lot of the Snyder cult online, getting mad at certain things in MCU, I cannot say how much I laughed at the fact that James Gunn and Taika made a great movie, and they have to accept that.
Yeah. What is this Ayer cut shit that's going on right now? What's that about?
Oh God, that's again this other Suicide Squad movie that people are talking about. Total fiction. Don't know what they're talking about. There is no cut of a fake movie. What are you doing?
Yeah, he has said that he doesn't care if his old cut gets released or not, but that his cut didn't have any quote-unquote radio songs, and that's where all that unused Joker and Harley footage would have been, but I have no interest in seeing a longer version of that movie. There's our extended cut of the movie. Do we need a third version? It's not fucking Blade Runner.
Which, how many is there? There's 6 of those?
Oh my God, there's like the final cut, the director's cut, the ultimate whatever.
I know they put them out on Blu-ray a couple years ago, where they literally released all the cuts, and then a couple years following that, they put out just the single like definitive cut.
Yeah,
I still don't even know if I've seen like probably 4 of them and not even realized it.
Yeah, it's like you only know which one you're seeing by first couple of minutes because a lot of them are pretty much the same all the way through, except for minor changes.
Yeah, I know like there's stuff in the beginning, and then like there's arrangements of the Roy's speech at the end, and it like kind of like makes you rethink like Deckard. But other than that,
some of them make it clear that Deckard's a replicant. Some of them don't.
Hope we didn't ruin that movie for anybody.
Blade Runner. I think I saw the first one, but that's about it.
Yes, spoiler
40 years ago.
30-something. Yeah.
Was the second one that I know Batista starred in that one? He had a very quick cameo, I think. But was that one any good? The 2049 one?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Visually stunning. Like if you're somebody that likes to buy movies to watch them in 4K, I would absolutely recommend that one.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I heard mixed reviews on that one. I had seen the first one. It just, I didn't like it that much personally. It's just not my cup of tea. But it was what it was. And I don't know. If you say there's good things about the second one, I'm going to have to check it out.
I mean, if you like grumpy Harrison Ford, this movie gives it to you.
Harrison Ford. When's Indiana Jones 6 coming out? I heard they're still working on that. Or 5, not 6. I'm sorry.
God, I hope never.
You know, they've been working on the movie for like 5, 6, 7 years now. I mean, the last one came out 13 years ago, and the guy's almost 80 now, and they're still doing it. I mean, I don't get it.
COVID and an injury that Harrison Ford suffered.
Yeah, he just got injured, but I think the only thing that anybody knows is it takes place in like 1974 or 1975, which, if you think about, like, one of the original trilogy movies took place in like 1919, so
yeah.
like I don't see how it adds up.
Yeah. Well, he's a real old man.
Yeah, he is a very old man. I thought what he did in Star Wars was great when they brought him back and got killed off.
Explain that his exposure to the Grail has given him long life or some bullshit.
Love me some Harrison Ford, but I can't say I'm overly invested in another Indiana Jones movie. I love the first 3. That fourth one was not good, so a fifth one just kind of seems questionable.
Dude, they've already gone to the alien.
I know. What more can you do beyond that? Yeah.
Literally send him to hell. Like, that's the only option.
I know. What is this? The fucking Jason versus Freddy movies? Or what was it? It was the Friday the 13th movies where they went to space. Was that Jason X?
Yeah, that was Jason. Oh, but if we're talking about Jason movies, I want to see Dom Toretto versus Jason. I saw you post that the other day, and I was like, I would watch the hell out of that.
I was just coming up with random sequels to Fast movies.
If this leads to Jason versus Dom and a street race, then sign me up. This will be the first Fast movie I'll watch in a long time if that's what we get.
Street race.
Hey, to be fair, 8 was very entertaining, but I've had no desire to rush out to go see the new one. I'll probably watch it, but I don't know.
It wasn't that good. I don't know.
The magic wore off.
Hit or miss.
Yeah. And when they went into space in that one, I just completely lost it. The movie itself wasn't great. I thought it was fine for what it was. And I've never been the biggest fan of the franchise. Again, it was the same thing like with what you said, Bill, with about this movie. Like I was interested to see what Cena's role would be, how he would do whatever. And I thought he was good to an extent. But the overall movie was just completely unnecessary, and the space shit completely took me out of it. I know, obviously, we come from... What'd you say?
I'll say one thing for that movie. They did a better job convincing me that the space stuff was possible than Cena and Diesel being brothers.
I know, we discussed that, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know. They'll probably continue on with that. It was just completely ridiculous. And again, I know we come from wrestling. I know it's all about suspending disbelief, but that was just completely ridiculous. I'm like, this is just stupid. That was it for me. But thankfully, this movie was a lot better. I thoroughly enjoyed Suicide Squad. Honestly, I thought it was one of the better movies I've seen this year, and there's been some good ones so far. But and it was cool to talk about something other than Marvel for once, even though obviously all the Marvel shit we talk about was great. But there's a reason why we didn't really go in the full-on Snyder Cut review, because I don't think a lot of positive things would have come out of it, at least as far as what our opinions were on it for the most part. But I'm glad we were able to take the time to talk about Suicide Squad, especially before What If comes out on Wednesday, which I think a lot of people are sleeping on, and I think that's going to be a great show too. But yeah, anything else from Suicide Squad, guys, that you wanted to discuss before we ride off into the sunset here?
I just can't say enough about the ensemble team feel. Like, that's really what I enjoyed the most. I feel like Ratcatcher 2, Polka Dot Man, I really felt like, they were elevated by being featured as much as they were. And I know some people are like, oh, they were useless characters, but I don't, they kind of added to the heart of the movie, and, it wasn't just a suicide mission. Like, I don't really know how else to phrase it, but, it took a lot of the macho action stuff out of it, and it, kind of grounded it a little bit more. And it was, it was kind of charming.
Yeah, exactly. Especially towards the end too, and they kind of became a real team. And yeah, no, I thought it was well done, and especially with his daughter in the beginning was ashamed to have him as a father, and then he kind of made the face turn, so to speak, by saving the world. So yeah, I thought it was well done. I enjoyed it for what it was. Obviously, it's available on HBO Max. Did you guys all watch it on HBO Max this past week?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're at fault for the underwhelming box office.
I was gonna say, is that why you guys think it did so poorly at the box office, was because of the HBO Max release? Because I know that was an issue with Black Widow too, but that obviously I thought this movie was better than that. But anyway,
I mean, it could also be it's a hard R movie. People, I don't know how many people are worried, but going out into theaters with the Delta variant and all that stuff, like I just personally, like I said to start the call, I found out it was getting released early on Thursday, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to watch it now.
Yeah.
Like, it's right there. But at the same time, I went and saw Black Widow in a theater. Like, I was on vacation, we had a free night, and I was like, all right, let's go check it out. So I didn't have plans either way, so it just so happened that I had time to watch it.
Yeah, it depends on the movie, and I think most movies should be enjoyed in a theater, but like Chris, you had talked about when we saw or reviewed Black Widow a couple of weeks ago, how, the closest movie theater to you would have been like 45 minutes, and it just wasn't worth for Black Widow. And this movie came out a day early, so, I mean, why bother? Why not just watch an HBO Max? If you're paying for the goddamn service, you might as well at that point, so it makes sense. But, I mean, with that being said, I know you mentioned this last time, Chris, about how with the movies on HBO Max and how they committed to a full year of this, pretty much until the end of 2021, I believe. I don't know how other movies are going to do or not do in the box office, how well they'll do and stuff like that. Do you think the days, as short-lived as they might be, of movies showing up on HBO Max early and Disney Plus and shit like that, might be short-lived, and then it might be over after this year, after some movies are doing probably less stellar than they should?
No, I think bigger studios still want movie theaters because that's where the revenue is going to come in for that. I mean, Disney is not going to make nearly as much off Black Widow as they would have with just a theatrical release and no pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like more movies going to streaming, yeah, we know that's going to be a reality going forward because these streaming services need content, but I don't see it being a thing that'll kill movie theaters.
Oh no!
I just think we're going to start seeing more stuff get made specifically for streaming, like that Chris Pratt movie, The Tomorrow War. That was supposed to go to theaters, but it's just ended up on Prime because they got tired of waiting to put it out.
I was wondering what that was because I had seen trailers for it, and I'm like, what is this? It looked like, I don't know what it looked like, but I was confused about what it was supposed to be about. Is that on Prime now, or is that still coming out soon?
Yeah, it's on Prime now. It's just part of the service. You don't have to pay extra for it like you would with Black Widow, but it's a relatively generic sci-fi action movie, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it has an interesting premise that they don't do nearly enough with.
So you would recommend watching it or no?
I mean, it's a fun movie just for like the action scenes and the special effects and stuff, but I wouldn't say it's a movie that anybody's going to be talking about in 5 years.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I feel like people are not talking about it right now.
I was going to say, I didn't even know it was out. I haven't seen anyone talking about it.
But it was just like, oh, it's the title card when I log into Prime. Okay, and then, I went about looking for whatever I was looking for, but I haven't really heard like any definitive talk like for or against it. It's just, hey, it's Chris Pratt's new movie, so
yeah,
I feel like that's kind of telling.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies where like they could have gotten anybody for this role. It doesn't feel like a Chris Pratt character. It's just a generic like action movie lead. So yeah, I mean it's one of those movies that I would say if you're bored one night, it might be worth a watch if you like, alien invasion, sci-fi kind of stuff, but it doesn't do anything to break the mold.
That's what I figured, and nothing really about the trailer stood out to me. I like Chris Pratt, so I was willing to... I mean, I have Amazon Prime, so maybe I'll watch it anyway at some point, but not exactly super high up on my list. But for anyone who hasn't seen Suicide Squad, or if you already saw it once, definitely watch it again on HBO Max if you have it, or go see it in the theater or whatever, because I thought this was a lot of fun. So this was a great way to kind of lead into the what-if stuff coming up this week, so obviously we'll talk about it when we talk about it, and I look forward to that as well. But Bill, first and foremost, thank you for coming on. I know we don't talk... This is your actual debut here on the show, helping us break down Suicide Squad. And like I said earlier, people can catch you on the Twitter machine at bpritchard152, and people can follow you there for more thoughts and everything wrestling, Marvel, and everything else. So thanks again, dude, for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed this a lot. Hope we get to do this again in the future. And real quick, I just saw this pop up. It looks like we'll have more to talk about because the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, the teaser just came out.
Oh, so. Holy shit. Well, we got to jump off here and go watch it. So
we got to watch it.
It's about goddamn time. I probably should have figured that because that stuff usually drops on a Monday, but I didn't think it'd be right now. So that's awesome. That's some breaking news, and I got to go check that out now. But Phil, Chris, it's always a great time talking to you guys. Phil, you're on the Twitter machine at Phil. What did I say before? I think I said Phil. What's your Twitter machine, Phil? I'm forgetting it right now. Slip on my mind.
Phil DL616.
Phil DL616. Okay, that's what I was going to say, but I didn't want to botch it and sound like a fucking moron, even though I've said it for like a year now. But nonetheless, people can follow you there. Chris, you're on the Twitter machine at BR_Doctor. I look forward to seeing you guys both in Chicago as well for All Out next month.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a fun time. But until then, guys, take care. Thanks for joining us as always, and we'll catch you guys down the road.
Thanks.